Welcome back to another episode of Maya Geek. This week, we're going to be moving a little further west. On the islands in the Pacific Ocean resides a people, rich in culture, stories, and tarot.
These stories include tales of gods, monsters, fairies, and Maui. Not that one.
Polynesia is located off the coast of Papua New Guinea and is the largest of the 3 areas of the Pacific Islands. It consists of more than 15 main island groups, which are generally separated into 2 groups. Western Polynesia is characterized as the 3 main archipelagos of Samoa, Tonga, and Fiji. Central Polynesia includes such islands as the Marquesas Islands, Hawaii, and Rapa Nui, better known as Easter Island.
The slight variation of mythology across Polynesia suggests a singular origin and supports the theory of cultural differentiation. What is cultural differentiation? Cultural differentiation is, in the anthropological context, the subtle cultural changes that occur in places separated by physical barriers.
Time for a quick lesson in evolutionary theory. Cultural differentiation comes from the idea of speciation, which comes from Darwin's work with finches on the Galapagos Islands. Geographic isolation causes a species to adapt to its unique environment, becoming genetically different. This is also known as adaptive radiation. So what if we apply this theory to culture? Things we'll need are a distinct culture, distance, a physical barrier, and 2 groups from that same distinct culture. When you put barriers between the 2 groups, what will happen? Let's find out. In Polynesia, each island has its own unique ecosystem. Unique ecosystems require different adaptations. So, if a culture split into 2 groups and was separated by a physical barrier, for example, the ocean, the cultures would change and adapt. But why? And how exactly does that work? Polynesian mythology is passed on by oral tradition, or word of mouth. This makes it really easy to change stories. Say we have a set of 4 islands, Island A, B, C, and D. What happens if we place a barrier between Island A and B and C and D? Over time, we would see a change in the cultures, and Island A and B would retain similar cultures, as would C and D. However, the 2 cultures, Culture A1 and Culture A2, will be slightly different.
There is biological and linguistic evidence of a singular origin of Polynesian peoples.
The presence of lapita pottery throughout the region is also evidence of a singular origin. But today, we're going to take a step back from pottery, linguistics, and biology. Tell some stories.
Let's briefly discuss some common beings that appear throughout Polynesian mythology. We'll discuss ghosts, elves and fairies, and giants. Elves and fairies appear mostly in stories from New Zealand. They include several different groups or families. They are active at night, building useful structures. They enjoy the company of others, and they don't know how to use fire, so they have to eat their food raw. Another creature that appears throughout all of Polynesian mythology are ghosts. It is said that there are 2 worlds, the human world and the spirit world. And when a human died, their spirit escaped through their cranium or their mouth. It depended on the region of the island. Sometimes spirits didn't make it to the afterlife and became ghosts. There were 3 kinds of ghosts in Polynesian mythology: good ghosts, rambling ghosts, and malevolent ghosts. Good ghosts often resided in the skulls of their previous bodies and watched over their living relatives and family members. Rambling ghosts took only occasional interest in their living family members, and malevolent ghosts brought destruction upon anyone who crossed their path. These ghosts can communicate with the living through omens, auguries, and dreams. The final creatures that appear throughout all of Polynesian mythology are giants. There are 2 main stories about giants. The first is from Samoa and is about Losi. Losi was the god's earthly servant. He was invited up to the heavens for a feast, stole a bit of taro, and the gods found out. A war started between the gods and the giants. The giants won and stole heavenly foods and brought them to earth. These foods included taro, kava, and breadfruit. Central Polynesian mythology also includes giants, but they're called hivas in the Tuamatus Islands. One story is about Patira, who kidnapped the wife of the greatest warrior, Moeva. Moeva used his magic malo and killed the giant, and Moeva then killed Patira's whole family of giants and took control of the islands. This story is often linked with the Christian story of David and Goliath.
Western Polynesia is made up of 3 main archipelagos known as Samoa, Tonga, and Fiji. Due to the proximity of these islands to the homeland of New Guinea, it only makes sense that the oral traditions and mythology would be a little more traditional than places further from home.
The creation stories of Western Polynesia, which include Samoa and New Zealand, and Central Polynesia, which include Marquesas Islands and Tahiti, each carry with them different and unique aspects. Stories from Western Polynesia include primordial pairs, often the earth and the sky, which give way to the first gods. They also claim that the separation of earth and sky was done by Tangaloa and Tane. Contrastingly, creation stories from Central Polynesia refer to a single creator, often called Tagaloa, who created the lesser gods, and the separation of earth and sky was by Maui rather than Tangaloa. It only makes sense that the stories from both Western and Central Polynesia would share similar elements. Both regions include a common deity known as Tangaloa, have stories of the separation of earth and sky, though these vary from region to region. They include stories of the creation of gods and have their beginnings in nothing.
It is said that the islands were pulled from the sea by Tangaloa, or at least that's what Western Polynesia said. But in Central Polynesia, they say that Maui pulled the islands from the sea.
Ah, there it is. You're probably wondering, who is Maui? Well, he's the most famous demigod throughout all of Polynesia. Some of his more famous exploits include separating the earth from the sky, snaring the sun to lengthen the day, stealing fire from the underworld, and fishing the islands from the sea. You're welcome.
Since most of this stuff comes from oral tradition, it makes even more sense that things would evolve and change over time. People in one area will swap stories, and people in a different area will swap stories, and then they will change and become similar in each area, but distinct from one another.
This makes sense in Western Polynesia, because the islands are within traversing distance, so oral tradition is going to be easier to pass along. This also applies to Central Polynesia, but it explains why the 2 areas have distinct differences in their mythologies.
As technology has made its way to most, if not all, of the Pacific Islands, the future of oral history and tradition is unclear. Technology alters the transfer of stories by rendering the barriers between people obsolete. With cell phones, television, and the internet, stories can spread farther and faster now than ever before. But does this mean that culture stories will lose their rich diversity? Only time will tell. For more stories and myths, check out the Handbook of Polynesian Mythology, published in 2004 and written by Robert D. Craig. Look to the resources section in the description below for additional information concerning theories of common origins in Polynesia.